Hey, business owners or managers or leaders of an organization or HR professionals, particularly those in Townsville, North Queensland. Here's part two of our attracting and recruiting people with disabilities to your organization. And part two here, really, I'm going to talk about a few different strategies other than the traditional create job ad with traditional position description and advertise online, and particularly the aspect of the nature of the role. So we've traditionally have full-time, part-time, casual, or contract roles that we advertise. And the position descriptions are typically 5 to 10 bullet points of very lengthy descriptions. And in episode 1, I talked about the language that we use that might exclude a number of people from the job, not just people with disabilities, but people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, Indigenous people, people who've had gaps in their work history, people returning to the workforce or looking for work within school hours. So here's a few strategies that I'd like to talk about that kind of all revolve around something called job customization or customized employment. And so the premise behind job customization is that rather than hiring someone with a disability from a pool of applicants where you're kind of comparing people, this person against others in the pool, kind of this who's better than others, and that happens still. I've been a part of recruitment processes where that still happens. The employer is asked to really focus on their business and what tasks need to be done. Maybe the ones that never get done that are really valuable but don't get done often, or maybe the ones that they're more senior staff that kind of drag their time away from the more return on investment tasks for the business. So what tasks need to be done? And then you look at, okay, what skills, talents, motivations, interests are required from a job seeker, or how do we match that person who's seeking work with the needs of the employer. So it's not to create something out of thin air that isn't relevant. It's to look at your needs as a business, the unmet needs especially, that are really valuable, and match that with the employee, potential employee. And so this is really a relevant strategy because it results in more success of that employee and of the company, because you're actually getting a need met, and both parties can see value in that relationship. It also means that the employee is going to get a higher level of satisfaction from doing that work, because that kind of they're competent, or they can slowly learn more and more and more, versus having to come in with such a high threshold that there's not going to be any success. And so there's going to be higher productivity from that employee. And a business is likely to go, well, they've already done these things, we'll give them a bit more. So what are a few strategies? Because there's a few different job customization strategies or customized employment strategies that you can use. So one of them is job creation. So this involves creating a position for a person with a disability where that position hasn't previously existed in a company. We usually have a traditional set of positions that we always create. We use the same old PDs that have been sitting around for ages, and we just go, yep, that's our business structure. In a market like this, where it's an employee's market and we're figuring out how to tap into a talent pool and competing with a workforce that wants to know they're coming to work for a bigger purpose, and that they have ways to start off at an entry level and to be supported and trained and build up from there, job creation is a helpful strategy. So you can think about things like, are there tasks that I'd like to see done more often in a workplace? It could be data entry, data analysis. It could be tasks related to, office liaison or event management or social media. It could be something that's totally unrelated to that. Maybe it's just tasks that have been sitting around that you wish got done more often. Are there tasks that some of the employees do that could be more efficiently and reliably done by someone else? So again, your more experienced, advanced staff that have been around for a while, maybe there's things that someone else can do that they don't need to be doing. They could teach that other person how to do and kind of mentor and hand that over. And that don't take them away from their area of expertise, really. I see in research labs and in science labs, the sterilization and the stocking and storeroom type stuff and some paperwork and scanning and admin stuff tends to take people away from the higher level analysis, for example. Um, are there times where the employees are behind schedule? There's this whole to-do list. What's on that to-do list that maybe someone else could do? Is there overtime you're paying employees where you could actually be creating a new role? And this doesn't have to be a full-time role. This could be 6, 12, 18, 24 hours a week. At any given times, you could think about, is that negotiable? Can we just see what someone might be willing to do and say that we're negotiable? And I can share an example of this job creation that someone's gone through here. Another example of customized employment or job customization is job restructuring. So this involves moving tasks from one position in the company to another to make those tasks, suitable for someone with a disability. So it may require sort of swapping tasks or, salary differential, and so this just needs to be some care taken around making sure the exchange of those tasks, that everyone's happy in that process and what that looks like. And so this can be that someone's employed as, say, for example, a retail assistant, but would have difficulty with taking inquiries at the counter or dealing with telephone queries. So that this is kind of restructured where that portion of the duty goes to another employee. So they kind of exchange tasks. So one employee might say, look, these amount of admin tasks, or checking the clothes on the rack for sizing or whatever else is something I'm not that great at, or I don't really enjoy doing, but it's valuable. But I do like talking on the phone and taking customer inquiries. So can we swap some of those tasks? The matching it. What are people's strengths? That's kind of the job restructuring. Or perhaps they could just take turns at the retail counter, so it's not always the same person. One sort of last way that's helpful is job sharing. So let's say you have a position that's 38 hours a week and you think it can only be done full-time. It's got to be a full-time role because every employee wants full-time work, which is potentially true. Of course, people desire full-time work for its purpose and the money that comes with it, but they might not want to start there at full-time work. Perhaps they're getting back into the workforce. Perhaps they have custody arrangements to consider. Perhaps they have health considerations and energy levels they need to maintain, or they're just the confidence around 38 hours. Why could that not be shared between 2 or more employees that were employed on a part-time basis to share a job? So people work maybe the same part-time hours, but on different days, 3 days and 2 days. Maybe some people work half days where it's a 9 to 1 and a 1 to 5. Maybe people share that job, or maybe there's some overlap where people are doing the same job at the same time. 2 people may be sharing some of the tasks of one role and doing that just as efficiently. And so there's some compatibility considerations around some of that and workflow, of course, but that's not to say that it's not possible. And we've seen examples in, say, storerooms at a private hospital where someone wanted to reduce their hours to part-time. And what they did is that they had 2 employees who worked each morning. And this also meant that the new employee with a disability would get training from that existing employee. So they'd kind of work together and have that confidence where one person was training another and they were both developing that confidence. And so this also meant that the current store person could be in the selection process of this new employee, and that eventually if this current store person decided that they were going to take leave, you had someone else who was competent in that process. So just thinking overall about job customization or customized employment, we really need to think about the skills, interests, the motivation of that potential job seeker, and the tasks from a business that we have needs for that are really valuable. Not taking out the rubbish or scrubbing the floors or doing shredding. Of course, that could be portions of the job, but what's the role that leads to? Does that lead to an administrative assistant role? Does that lead to a customer service officer, a store person role, a warehouse assistant? Where does that lead? and how can we take some of those tasks and combine them. And this is a win-win. When a person gets employed, they can enter into the workforce. You're developing that talent, that untapped talent, and you're getting your needs met as a business. And this also helps other employees in your organization to see that, yes, we can think outside the box. We can do things differently here, that negotiations are possible. And perhaps there's employees you already have that don't have disabilities that have other workplace adjustments that they're wanting to request. They don't feel comfortable because they haven't seen any examples of how to go about this. So you doing something like this, starting to think about that, and again, it's a process. Starting to think about in that first part, like what are the tasks that typically don't get done? How do we create a job? What does that look like? I'll post an example kind of in the comments and things, but this is just something else to really consider. So I hope you go well. Please do get in touch if you want to explore any of this job customization or customized employment, and all the best.